Hello, we're going to review Chapters 6 and 7 today, covering the cardiovascular system and its main transport medium, the blood.
Cool!
Okay, we're going to talk about blood composition. Blood can be separated into two main layers. We have the plasma layer, which makes up about 55%. It consists of a variety of organic and inorganic molecules and water. And then formed elements, which makes up about 45% of the blood, which includes the red blood cells, also called erythrocytes, the white blood cells, which are called leukocytes, and the platelets, which are called thrombocytes.
Okay, so now we know the players involved with blood. So what does blood do exactly? Well, it has three main functions. They're transport, defense, and regulation. Transport, primarily going to be the red blood cells that do this action. This is transporting oxygen and nutrient to tissues, removing carbon dioxide and waste products from those same tissues, and bringing them to whatever areas they need to get to, whether it be the kidneys or the lungs. And we also have that next function of defense. That's defending against invasion of pathogens, whether they be bacterial, viral infections. That's going to be primarily the white blood cells. We also have platelets, which play a role in preventing blood loss. And then our third function is regulation. And that's helping to maintain some of those homeostatic processes that we talked about earlier in other chapters, which in this case includes body temperature and blood pH.
Okay, now we're going to take a little bit of a closer look at the red blood cells. Red blood cells are actually shaped sort of like checker pieces. They actually move in on both sides. It's called biconcave. They're very small in size as compared to some of the other formed elements that we spoke of earlier. Red blood cells also occur in great quantities in the blood. They actually lack a nucleus, and that's thought to provide space for the hemoglobin, which is the protein that is structured to carry oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood. Another important characteristic of red blood cells you need to keep in mind is that they're actually produced in the red bone marrow of the skull, the ribs, the sternum, vertebra, and pelvis in adults. And all blood cells are produced from undifferentiated, also known as stem cells, found in that bone marrow.
Okay, so now we're going to look at our next form element called the white blood cells, also called leukocytes, which in Latin means white cells. So they are larger in size than red blood cells. They contain nuclei when they're mature. They do not contain hemoglobin, so they have no role in oxygen or carbon dioxide transport, and they're not nearly as numerous as red blood cells in the blood normally. Okay, so we're going to look at function of the white blood cells. Primarily, they are responsible for fighting infection in the body. They are actually able to leave the blood vessels themselves and actually move to the site of infection. They actually increase greatly in number in response to an infection. And there's actually many different types of white blood cells, and they're all named for their specific function in fighting infection.
Yeah, baby!
Okay, the last formed element we're going to talk about is called platelets. And platelets are not actually fully formed cells. They're actually called cell fragments. And they're made up of larger cells called megakaryocytes, which are actually found in that red bone marrow that we talked about earlier. Platelets are produced at a fairly high rate, and they're very much actually, it's the entire process of blood clotting or coagulation is related to the action of the platelets. They actually clump at the site of a puncture and seal the break in the blood vessel.
Where are the red blood cells produced?
That's a great question. The red blood cells are actually produced in the regions of specific bones in the adult body, and it's called red bone marrow. It's found in the skull, it's found in the ribs, it's found in the sternum, vertebra, and pelvis. Have you ever wondered about your blood type? Well, it's actually very important when we talk about blood typing. There's actually two types of molecules that are involved. One is called an antigen, which is a protein recognition marker found on the surface of your blood cells. And secondly is antibodies. These are proteins found in the blood surrounding the red blood cells that actually identify specific antigens. And blood typing itself, whether it be A, B, AB, or O, are all based on the type of antigen that is actually found on the surface of your blood cells. The reason that blood typing is so important is it has to do with the relationship between the antigens and the antibodies. In those of you that have blood type A, you have A antigens located on the surface of your blood cells. But in your blood is antibodies called anti-B antibodies, which means you can only receive type A blood and type O. We'll talk about type O in just a minute. Blood type B have B antigens located on the surface of their blood cells, and their blood contains anti-A antibodies, which means that those of you with blood type B can only receive blood which is blood type B as well as blood type O. Those of you who are blood type AB have a unique situation. It means that you have A and B antigens located on the surface of your cells, which means that you can actually accept all types of blood, and you have no antibodies against any types of blood. Those of you with blood type O also have a unique situation because you have no antigens located on the surface of your cells, but your blood contains anti-A and anti-B antibodies, which means that you can only accept type O blood, but can donate to any other type of blood.
So in the summary, again, we talk about the type of blood cell. We're going to remember the red blood cell. We talk about the white blood cell, the platelet. And again, very important, don't forget that the white blood cell, and the platelet, they are in a liquid component that's called the plasma. Now, the function is, again, very important point, is to transport oxygen and carbon dioxide, and again, transporting waste product, and transporting also nutrients around to perfuse each single tissue, and again to do gas exchange at the level of the lungs, but also very important at the level of the tissue to keep the tissue alive. And we talk about also the function of the hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is going to be transporting, binding oxygen and carbon dioxide. The majority of the carbon dioxide is in the liquid component. It's transported as bicarbonate. We'll talk more about that. But again, oxygen is binding to the iron of the hemoglobin, to the iron component. And carbon dioxide does also in small amount. And again, the blood cell, where they are forming. We talk about that the blood cell are forming the bone marrow. The bone marrow is located inside, again, flat bone. We talk about different type of bone. We talk about the sternum. We talk about the also the pelvic bone. Think about when we do a bone marrow transplant, we use the pelvic bone. There's tons of bone marrow there. And we talk about blood typing. We have 4 blood types. Type A, B, AB, and 0. And the last but not the least, stay tuned for a quiz. Bye-bye.